I grew up on a lot of fish sticks and orange soda and French fries, and I managed to still absolutely love vegetables now and fruits. Those other things were available. So sometimes my kids, if I make a meal, they don't like it and they're hungry, I make my kids chicken nugget. Maybe I'm breaking some rules when I do that, but I'm doing the best I can and what I think in that moment is best for my children.
Everybody raises children so differently. Some parents are okay, all right, you eat this, go to bed hungry. But for me, I'm something like a backup meal or something, because I can't expect them to like everything that I make. So I think it's so important to not push that on them, but allow them to see us enjoying those meals so that they might also be curious.
My daughter's favorite foods are cheddar cheese and sour cream. Anything that you can put cheddar cheese and sour cream on tacos, baked potatoes. So I'm not doing parenting 100% correctly either.
I got girl after my own heart. Please tell your daughter that we have the exact same taste preference.
I always say, if you're worried about being a good parent, you're probably a good parent.
Welcome to Stronger You Radio with Mike Dola. Join Mike and friends as they discuss issues to keep you healthy, fit, and on track to create a stronger you. Let's listen in now.
What's up, Stronger You fam? Welcome back to another edition of Stronger You Radio. I am your host, Tanner Bays, and today I'm being joined by Dr. Jessica Bachman, who I am sure many of you are familiar with. If you aren't, you should be. She's practically my co-host now. If not here on Instagram, definitely. But also, special first-time guest, long-time listener, first-time caller, DeeDee Ballesteros. What's up, DeeDee? How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Tanner?
I'd love a little bit of some backstory. You are a coach for us.
Correct.
How long have you been a coach? When, how did you first kind of get into this world? Tell us about it.
I first learned about macros and lifting when I was about 6 months postpartum with my first kid, Emma. She's now turning 7 in December, and I had always been fit before. I'd always been running or hiking or doing all those crazy things, and that was just my way of dealing with stress and knowing how to stay fit, but that wasn't working anymore. So I hired my first nutrition coach, and my brain just exploded at that point. I was like, what? How come everybody doesn't know about this? It's is it really that easy, right? I mean, it wasn't super easy. I still had to learn so much. I thought when you hired a coach, they were going to give you so much more, right? And I wanted more of a hands-on type of person, which my coach wasn't. So I remember telling my coach at the time, I'm like, just so you know, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I can't wait to circle back one day and tell you that I became a coach too. So that was where kind of the fire started, because it changed my life drastically, and it kind of gave me that vision for something greater than just being a mom for me, which had always been something that I wanted to do even before becoming a parent. And so I was really excited that I had found that one thing that I was going to be, growing my other baby, I guess you could say. So that's when I first found about it, and then I just dove all in. I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did.
So how long have you been with Stronger You as a coach?
As a coach for Stronger You, I think it's going to be almost 2 years. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
Yeah.
I know, time flies.
Yeah, that is wild, and clearly it's taking us far too long to get you on here. So I'm glad you're taking care of that. But the reason I wanted to have both of you on here today is because DeeDee, you brought up a really great idea for the podcast and for the blog as well. Really kind of leaning on some of your own experiences in the past and something that we thought would be super relatable to a lot of our members. And that is what I will just say as an umbrella term, doing Stronger You while being a mom.
Yes.
So I'm going to just kind of turn it over to you. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that. And then Jess, feel free to chime in wherever.
When you mention that, it reminds me of the time that when I paid for that first coach, I felt so guilty for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, did I just spend that much money on myself? I better follow through. I just had all like the flood of thoughts and emotions, overwhelm me, because as a mom, like, nobody tells you this. But when you become a mom, it's like this impending like mom guilt that you feel all the time. And so I remember having to just remind myself, of why I was doing what I was doing. Have you ever felt like that, Jess?
Yeah, I think especially when your kids are young and they really rely on you for everything that they need, and you feel like your whole life revolves on everything, just them all the time, when they're sleeping, when they're eating. You plan your life around them, and you feel bad about doing anything for yourself at all. And I feel the same way. Financially, for me, it's even more time-wise. Like for me to spend time planning meals and prepping things and thinking about food when I could be doing stuff with them instead was really, really hard initially to get past. But then you realize, and the reason I've made a lot of the choices I've made in my life recently is that you are their ultimate role model, right? And so do I want my daughter to be in a position where she's not prioritizing her own health, she's not planning her meals, not doing things that make her happy because she feels bad about her kids? Like, no, I want her to see the way to approach this, that she's going to live a happy life,
Yeah, I think everybody finds like their little thing that, they can tell themselves to be able to, move in the direction of taking care of themselves. Because ultimately that's what when my members at Stronger You bring up mom guilt, I'm like, all right, so what are you feeling mom guilt about, right? Because I think it's a myriad term, kind of like, I don't know exactly what somebody might be feeling mom guilt about or why. And so it's really important to almost kind of dig a little deeper and to find out like what they're feeling mom guilt about, because it really is such a big umbrella of things that could possibly be.
One that I speak with at DeeDee, and I guess just introduced to you, is Jess Bachman. I do have two kids. I have a 6-year-old and 8-year-old, so I've been through kind of the younger stages, and now they're at a stage where, they are able to help me with some food prep stuff, some things in the kitchen here or there, but they've also got a little bit pickier than they were when they were younger. Like I've had a bunch of different experiences. And one thing working with members I found a lot, DeeDee, and I wonder with you too, is that moms sometimes feel guilty about making healthy food options that maybe their kids won't eat, or they feel bad about eating foods or preparing foods that aren't for the whole family, they're for themselves only, or things that fit their program. Have you found that also? Like, what are some things you do to work with your members on that?
Yeah, that is a very common issue, and then I've also found, from my own experience, like setting aside time to work out, that was really hard, because then I would have to rely on sometimes my husband and ask him like, hey, can you put the kids down? Hey, can you give them a bath? Hey, because I'm going to go and lift in the garage, or I'm going to go to the gym. And so there's that chunk of time where I kind of have to trust somebody else to take care of my children so that I can go do the thing that I want to do. And that's hard. And sometimes maybe that might be a babysitter, but I also have to pay money too. And so I'm like, is this worth it, right? Is this worth it? And so I think that's like the big question that as moms we ask ourselves, is this worth it? So the way that I tried to help facilitate, just kind of helping my members figure out where they're at and where they want to go with that, is by just asking them what they're feeling mom guilt about. And sometimes they don't even know that they're feeling mom guilt, to be honest. And so we explore that. And not until I hear the word guilt do we explore that, because I can't make that assumption for them. So I try to find out exactly what's going on there. And when they say, oh, it's because, I'd rather be spending time with them on the weekend than meal prepping or going grocery shopping, then I'd go, oh, okay, maybe that's where we need to, pay attention to, or figure out like why that is, right?
So this is something I am curious about, like for the both of you, when you're working with members and you're recognizing like some of these common feelings popping up, I mean, how quick are you to share some of your own experiences? Because like from the sound of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I know that both of you have worked at this on like the client/member side previously. So, like, is that something that you lean on pretty heavily when trying to relate in that situation?
Yeah, for me, it's with digital communication, if I was in person working with someone, I would spend a lot of time, asking them questions about what they're feeling and how they're doing. I do that still. But I do find, particularly when we're communicating a lot by text, by email, I typically ask questions, and I also offer my own experience. I'm like, hey, tell me more about what you're doing. Here's how I've handled the situation before, because I have been there. Like, as a mom, I understand, your kids are looking at you and then they're not eating the food you're preparing because it's healthy food. That stuff is really challenging to deal with on a daily basis. There's a lot of things that you feel bad about. So I do always offer kind of options. Like, for me, if I know I want to eat a healthier dinner, like something that I do, or if I need to eat specific foods that fit my macros, is that I will prepare a meal for the entire family. Like, let's say something like spaghetti and meatballs for everyone. And I'll make that, but I'll also make myself zoodles to eat on the side that just fits my macros better. And so I make small alternative options. And I do give my members some of those examples. That way they can say, okay, how can we all eat the same thing, but a little bit differently that does fit their macros, that fits my weight loss goals, my muscle building goals, whatever it is, where we can still all sit down and it doesn't feel like it's different. The kids aren't like, why is mommy eating something totally different? And you can have that conversation with them, like, mommy's just choosing things that are healthiest for her right now. This is the best thing for her. And you role model that, you talk through that, you have conversations, and it makes life a lot easier. So I do definitely give some tips like that to members, along with asking them, because maybe that's not their problem. You always need to ask questions about what they're struggling with too.
Yeah.
Sure. DeeDee, I assume something similar?
Yeah, I mean, usually when I offer like suggestions, I try to figure out like if they're even asking for my suggestion first, just because like sometimes that might overwhelm them if I go, hey, this is what I do, right? So like, yeah, sometimes if I know that they're ready for that, I will, but I typically try to figure out like where they're stuck first, because it could be that maybe that's not like the issue, right away. Maybe the other issue is like they just don't make time to go to the grocery store because, they wanted to spend time with their kids, tucking them away at bedtime. And so now they don't have any like, they don't have anything to eat for the week or anything exciting to look forward to, right? And so I try to like really, I guess what I try to do is like try to make them understand that it's normal, that nothing has gone wrong. And I remind them like, hey, nothing has gone wrong here. Like, we're all, like, as women, I think we're all kind of like more nurturing than the men, and so we tend to want to take care of everything, right? If we could, I'm sure that we would. We just want to like put it over our shoulders and be like, yeah, I can handle this. Yeah, I can handle this. And then you don't realize that maybe you can't. And so it's one of those things that like I try to tell people, I'm like, all right, like I know that you can. So, but like, what can you do, or what's the next step, right? So that they feel like, I guess the next step is possible for them, because sometimes they give up because it feels like too much, or it feels overwhelming, or it feels like they have to go, if they're experiencing this difficult emotion, then like they can't, that something has gone wrong when nothing really has. And so I think just like reminding them that like Jess, like she was super relatable with her stories and stuff. Like you just have to remind them like, yeah, it's okay to feel that way, but like, what can you still do?
I really love that, because I think that that's like a common human experience, is that we all get overwhelmed by the bigness of whatever we're in the middle of at some point. Like I just had this conversation with somebody earlier this morning, talking about like feeling like you're stuck in the weeds, which is like a term that I haven't used since I waited tables. But like, because when you're in the weeds, all you see is the weeds, right? Like you see nothing else. So even like the smallest suggestion that might have the best intention could still be super overwhelming if like somebody hasn't done the work to like figure out the context of where you are and what's going to be helpful to you, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So what I am curious to hear more about, and I'll start with you, DeeDee, is one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was was really, really refreshing and also interesting to hear was this emphasis on the need to put yourself first. In what ways in your life has that happened? Or in your fitness and nutrition coaching life, wherever, like, how are you prioritizing you right now, or have you been over the past few months?
So I'll be super real. Whenever I hear the word like prioritize yourself first, it's so cringy to me.
Oh, okay.
Still, I don't know.
Frame it the way you want to frame it. Seriously,
so I'm like, I don't know. It just doesn't like ring true to me. So I think the first thing you have to like acknowledge is like, what does feel good for you? Because if you're already like, I don't want to do that, because that doesn't feel good, then you might want to find something that might ring true to you. So like when you say that, I still feel those emotions. So I don't use the phrase, I'm going to put myself first, like ever.
Right. So what rings true for you?
So what rings true for me is like, how can I give myself space to set the right intention for the day? And so when I do that, like I know what needs to happen in order for me to actually like take care of myself. Because that's the ultimate goal, to take care of yourself. And you have to know, like, or our members have to know, like, why they're going to take care of themselves first, right? Or to prioritize themselves or whatever rings true for them, or set that intention, right? To honor what they want for their lives, or what they want their day to look like, or how they're going to pursue that goal. Because, again, it has to feel right for them in order for them to even want to actually take that first step. And so I always say like that's like the first thing that you want to do is just to find out like the wording to get yourself to wake up early, right? Or to eat that breakfast that you planned, or to go on that walk that you said you wanted to do. Because otherwise, like those are all the little steps that are going to help you get to the next thing. So it's important to find, I guess, the words that don't make you cringe.
So, okay, relatedly, I know for a fact that Jess is up at 5:30 every morning. And I also know for a fact that girl likes breakfast because she tried intermittent fasting and she, like, I think nearly ate Mike and I's head off. So and to DeeDee's point, like, those are the little steps that are involved in taking care of you, right? So, like, was that ever a challenge for you, Jess?
The way I kind of prioritize what I choose to do for myself, like everything can't be a priority, right? And when I realized that, you can't prioritize everything. So I do prioritize myself first. So DeeDee, we definitely feel differently about that. I do feel more centered in all areas of my life if I am the priority. But I choose specific things to prioritize. I prioritize my sleep. I prioritize my quiet time in the morning with coffee, with meditation, with reading. Like, I can't prioritize everything. So some days maybe I don't get to go for the walk at lunchtime because I chose to prioritize the other things. And so for me, I do have some self-care practices that I've decided are important. They're kind of the anchors that I need every single day to put the rest of my day, for me to be a good mom, for me to feel my best. So I do prioritize those first, and I don't mind saying that. If I fall out of rhythm with those things, I know that I'm not a good mom. That's when I lose my cool. That's when I end up yelling at my kids. That's when I'm less able to handle the stressors that come at me. I'm less productive. And so I know what priorities I need. And you can't prioritize everything. So again, I only have 3 or 4 things that I know I have to do every day and commit to, and I make happen no matter what, and who I need to ask help for. Because those things need to happen for me to be better as a mom and as the healthiest version of myself.
Got you. Okay, so like I'm piecing this together in my head as we go, and like the way that it kind of sounds like, or the way that I am making sense of this, is that like you are both practicing more or less non-negotiable self-care activities, right?
Yes.
That like happen on a daily basis, and Whereas for Jess, like, you view those as like,
or that we aim for at least.
Yeah, right. That like, well, I mean, let's be real. Like, I think, and this could be a whole discussion in itself, but like, we all have self-care practices that are important to us and help us stay grounded. But I think one of the worst mistakes anybody could make is falling into the trap that whenever you adopt a self-care practice, you will adopt that practice every single day for the rest of your life. Because it just probably doesn't really go that way. Like, it's life finds a way of intervening. But what it kind of sounds like is almost like, whereas like Jess, the way you frame it for yourself to like get yourself to stick to it is that like, I'm going to prioritize these things or these behaviors. And DeeDee, for you, it's like these practices are what allow me to create space to exist as my best self.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
That's, like I set the intention for this day. Like, I don't get to, like, everything else around me is going to happen, and that's expected. And I'm not going to react to that because I've already invested in, putting myself in a place where I know what intention I want to bring to the day. And that's going to carry out through my practices and my habits and my things that I've chosen to work on that day.
So for parents that are listening, like, how iterative of a process was that for the both of you? Like, or how much did you have to, or have you had to adapt that as time has gone on and as your kids have gotten older?
It's a really great question. It's an ongoing thing, to be honest. Like, at the beginning, it was just all overwhelm, and I had to be okay with chaos. And that's when they were really little. And I just had to be like, all right, today is going to be a win if I get in, that workout. And maybe I'll go over calories, but try my best, And so I remember those days so vividly because it's just so hard. And they say, as the kids grow older, it gets easier. But the days are long and the years are short. That's what they say. And so you just can't see past, I guess, the hills or it's hard to really think about what's ahead. And so to stay centered and present through those hard moments and just practice self-compassion and grace is really how I got over some of that. And then asking for help was really hard for me because I like to do it all. And I think culturally we're kind of expected to do that, which I think is unfair. But it's not the truth, right? So asking for help has been a huge thing for me, and not to feel guilty about, but to really be excited about that. And so if I'm able to ask for help, then I can actually do things like, go on a much needed hike with my girlfriends and refresh my soul versus not being able to do that because I'm at home with kids and I feel bad leaving them or what have you. So I think it's just evolved over the years. I mean, a couple weeks ago, I was feeling some guilt there too over like wanting to get my steps in while I was at the park with my kids. And my daughter was like, "Can you push me on this swing?" And I'm over there like trying to get my steps in. And like, "What the hell, DeeDee?" And I'm like, "I need to get my steps in."
But no, I've got this step goal.
I have this goal. Yeah. And so it was a really good indicator for me to go, okay, well, what can I do differently here? Right? And so it was, I have that sense of mom guilt, but sometimes it's a good thing. And over the years, I've started to kind of accept that and be like, oh, this is when the red light turns on and I have to like think and critically think instead of crawl back into my hole of mom guilt. And so when that happens, and like I start to think of like, okay, well, what can I do, right? Because then if I'm asking my brain those questions, my brain's going to try to come up with a solution. And so it did, and I was like, all right, we're on it. We're going to get this desk treadmill, which I'm on right now, and I can get that cardio without having to, take away from my daughter's pushing of the swing. Without
having to leave the swing set.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a good thing when you start to feel that, emotion, right, that we don't really want to feel because it's a little icky, but it could be a nice little alarm that will help you kind of think strategically what you could possibly do if you kind of sit with it for a while.
What about you, Jess? Like, how much practice or changing or effort has had to go into those self-care practices and making sure you hit them daily?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's also our kids getting older, but it's also like I'm getting older, so I don't know if it's wisdom. I don't know if these same things would have happened to me if I didn't have kids. Maybe they accelerated you getting there, but I think, being in my mid-30s now might just be part of it, but letting go of the things you can't control. And like when they're way younger, you're so exhausted. You do just get through each day. You're like, my goal is to get through the day without killing one of these children. Like, I just got to keep them fed, like keep them happy in some way, try and smile, keep them alive, right? It's so hectic. And not that it's easier now, but there is more control, right? They don't need you quite as much. My kids are a little bit older, but it took a lot of personal development. And for me, the way I did that was through books and podcasts and reading and blogs. Like, I got very, very much into, okay, I'm feeling out of control in my life. How can I take control back? And you take control back by realizing you don't have control over anything besides yourself. And so, again, I'm sure being a mom had a lot to do with that process, but it's also, I think, the process of just getting older in general and realizing that in all areas of your life, that's kind of how you need to focus, just on your own mindset about things and the control that you do have. So definitely, I'm a much better mom now that I've let go of things. My kids are making messes. I'm like, whereas before I'd be like, put that away. Not do that. And then we'll talk about how you're going to clean up afterwards. Like, let go of the control in situations, allow them to be them in some ways, but you give them tools to kind of work through that and what it's like to be a human. Well, now you have to deal with the consequences of making that mess, and you got to clean it up. And so,
that is gold.
Yeah. Right. It's definitely partially the kids getting older. You're sleeping a little bit more, hopefully. It's just the first 2 years are wild. I can't remember what it was like to be when you have an under 2-year-old. It's just completely craziness, and it's still a lot of craziness now, but you do have more control. You have a little bit more time, a little bit more structure, and you can think through those things. And if you work towards personal development, you can get there too.
Okay, so related to that, because I know we have a fair number of moms who have children under 2. Is there anything different that you work on with those moms, or any adaptation to your coaching practice?
So under 2, again, it's really working on solutions for whatever their main issue is. Like DeeDee had mentioned beforehand, I'd say some of the things like time is obviously an issue. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to harp on moms that have kids under 2 about getting sleep, because it's maybe not within their control at all to do that. But giving suggestions and coming up with options for them, perhaps relying on a meal prep company is a great opportunity for them. Perhaps ordering a tray of grilled chicken from a restaurant is something that can literally make their lives so much easier. Using things like frozen vegetables as a side dish is fine. Like, letting them realize they don't have to be perfect in all areas, that good enough is good enough, and let's work on doing better than you were doing and keep the priority. So if weight loss is a priority at that time, think about calories overall. How can we get you eating foods or make you comfortable with losing weight? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to eat only quote unquote healthy foods right now. It might be a little bit more convenience, and that's okay. And so getting them to focus on not having to be perfect, whatever their definition of perfect is, but doing enough to feel good and make progress still with what they have available to them at that time.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's so good. Yeah, the harping on the sleep thing. Yeah, like you definitely want to be like,
yeah.
I learned that the hard way through coaching. To be honest. So sometimes that's the way it goes.
Well, to that point, like, coaching is a funny business, and that, like, what great health supportive behaviors look like, and sometimes it's hard to check yourself and not be like, eat vegetables at every meal, sleep 8 hours,
right?
Walk, do these things. And it's like, that might not make the most sense right now.
Right. Yeah. So I love what Jess had to offer, because really at the end of the day, it's about helping them see where their wins are. Especially when you're like in the thick of it, you can't see the wins or the progress, because you're just so like sleep deprived, or you're dealing with just like the craziness of it all. And so I really love to help celebrate the wins more, I would say, with those people, because it's like with that section, you know, of women who have the kids that are under 2, because really once you kind of acknowledge like those wins for them and see them, spot those for them and like go, hey, look, you know, here they are, here's your wins from the week, then they get excited about what's possible for them. And so I really love to just show that to them, which I think is my favorite part about the coaching, to be honest.
No, that's fair. Like, I think all 3 of us can happily say that, like, one of the most gratifying parts of this job is being able to show, like, go to somebody and be like, can you believe what you've done?
Yeah.
Like, that never gets old.
It never gets old.
Yeah, and it won't ever get old, because, like, there are always people who are making incredible changes happen in their lives, and, like, we get this front row seat to it to, like, watch it happen.
Right.
I am curious to know, in your day-to-day life, for both of you, DeeDee, we'll start with you. Like, was meal prepping for the family a really big challenge at any point? And did it take some time to, like, figure out a system? And if so, what does that system look like?
That's a really good question, too. Yeah, for sure. I think it's a little weird at first, just because you're like, what the heck is a protein, carb, and fat?
Fair. Yeah.
So as you start learning that stuff, you know, then you start realizing like, oh my gosh, like these chicken nuggets have this much or whatever have you, right? And so some women have said, well, I don't want to cook 2 meals. I'm like, okay, but you know what I mean? So we've had to kind of figure out like together what feels good for them or what makes the most sense, right? Because it's really hard to sometimes like try to find like this one magical meal that's going to hit everybody's taste buds and allergies and preferences, right? So sometimes what I do is help like remind people, because this is what I did, that is temporary. Like this is just temporary while you get to your goals. And so I think reminding myself of that when I was in that phase helped me to get creative about the approaches that I never would have considered. Does that make sense? Like I would have never said no, like, or I would have not been open to the idea of making multiple meals prior, right? But then as I figure it out, I'm like, oh, I'm not really making multiple meals if I can just throw some chicken nuggets, you know, in the microwave or whatever in the oven while I put in my chicken. So like really trying to figure out how to make it happen at the same time is tricky. But being open to the idea of being like having an open mind instead of being closed-minded really does help a lot. So I don't know, there's no magic there. It's just really being open-minded.
What's so funny is that when Tanner first brought up this question, the first thing that came to mind to me is it did take me a little while to feel okay about giving my kids chicken nuggets. You know,
really?
Like as a mom, you're like, I'm only going to have, before you have kids, like my kids are only going to eat healthy food. They're eating everything I eat, all the fruits and vegetables. I am not buying chicken nuggets or fish sticks or anything like that. And, you know, I realized that I grew up on a lot of fish sticks and orange soda and French fries. And I managed to still absolutely love vegetables now and fruits. You know, those other things were available. Like you're doing your best as often as you possibly can. And chicken nuggets are fine. Like, so sometimes my kids, like if I make a meal, they don't like it and they're hungry. I also said, oh, you're going to bed hungry, right? I went, no, I make my kids chicken nuggets. Like that's what they're going to have. And maybe I'm breaking some rules when I do that, but I'm doing the best I can and what I think in that moment is best for my children. So it took a little while to get beyond that guilt though too. To either rethink what's okay with you, you know, like all the things you said you're going to do, like then when you're in the moment dealing with actually working with kids and making meals and what's going to work in your house, it might be totally different than what you thought.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be respectful too of like the certain moms approach things, because everybody raises children so differently. And so some parents are okay, like, all right, you eat this, go to bed hungry. But for me, I'm like, well, you know, fair enough. This was an experiment, right? Well, do you want a banana and some almond butter with that, you know, or something like a backup meal or something, because I can't expect them to like everything that I make, especially because when you're doing macro counting for the first time, maybe a lot of the meals are new. And so maybe you've never, like the person has never eaten like that before. And so the kids are like, what? What is this? Why are you buying this junk? Right? And so I think it's so important to like not push that on them, but allow them to see like us enjoying those meals so that they might also be curious. Like I'm surprised now. My daughter, she picks things off of our plate sometimes that I don't think she would like. She's like, oh, what is that? And then she'll grab it and like eat it. And I'm like, oh, you like that? Wow, that was very adventurous of you. Good work there, girl. Right? And it's just because she sees us eating it. And so she might try it because she sees that I like enjoy my food. And so it's kind of cool when your kids can watch you enjoy something and be curious themselves instead of like wanting, being pushed to like try something. But yeah,
there's such a balance with that because you're potentially creating stress around food, right? If you're only you only get to eat this, so then they're going to push back. Like you can't tell me what to do. I'm not going to eat that food now. And so there's a lot of research on like child feeding too about that. Like you offer it to them, you let them say no if they don't want to eat it, and that's okay. Like they learn over time. If you keep role modeling that you're going to eat those foods, you keep making them available because they might have to see those foods 10 to 12 times to actually taste them and start to like them. Like that's okay. You keep putting it out there, you keep role modeling, you keep showing them what to eat, you allow them to say no so that way they feel empowered to say yes, and you give that food option for them. So there is a balance, and again, there's not one best way of parenting style, but I think being a little bit flexible and just making healthy foods available is generally a good way to go for most parents, and kids will eventually be curious and want to try new foods. My son's favorite food is edamame, like who would have thought that? It's not like a common thing to eat, but we had it often enough that he absolutely loves that,
They try it.
And now, not to think that I'm the best parent, my daughter's favorite foods are cheddar cheese and sour cream. So anything that you can put cheddar cheese and sour cream on. So tacos, baked potatoes, so I'm not doing parenting 100% correctly either.
I got a girl after my own heart. Please tell your daughter that we have the exact same taste preference.
Yeah. I totally agree though with the circling back to like the chicken nuggets thing. I think that's hard, right? Because you want to like feed your kids the best, and there's all this stuff out there that says like all this stuff has sugar or preservatives, and you shouldn't have any of that stuff. So like as a parent, you don't want to make a mistake or do the wrong thing, but like at the expense of what though? And I think it's super important to ask yourself that, like at the expense of what? If you're stressed out of your mind and you're not like making those decisions, to like make it a little bit easier for yourself, what is the alternative? What's that causing? And so when you're able to make some trade-offs, like, okay, fine, serve the chicken nuggets with broccoli or cucumber or whatever veggie they'll eat, right? Then that's good enough. That's good enough. So yeah, it takes a while to like sit with that, process that as a parent, go, okay, well, what am I willing to do, so that I get to my goal too, because I matter. My goals matter too, right? Not just like the parenting or being a good mom or whatever, like what have you, but also like focusing on like what we want, I guess. Yeah.
No, what's so funny in listening to the both of you talk about that, like I can't help but feel like there are so many, like there are a lot of parallels between the ways in which like you have to be adaptable but also allow your children to explore foods that they want to eat, and also like how we have to coach people successfully if like they're going to make this work for a long time. All right, like you kind of like we all know like you can't like drag somebody along to their goal weight and make them stay that way for forever, right? Like you have to give them the space to play around and figure out a way to make this work for them and to feel empowered in how they're doing.
I love how Jess said that word, like giving them the choice empowers them. And it's so true.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to that book we read 2-3 months ago now, First Bite. Mm-hmm. I mean, they talked a whole lot about repeated exposure.
Yeah, so repeated exposure being important. And I would say that, there's ways to like define different types of parenting. And I think of this as coaching too. And you see the most kind of adversities towards foods from kids who came from authoritative parents. So parents that were like, you have to do this. You have to clear your plate. I think about from coaching. Like, you have to do this. This is the only way to do it. let anyone make any choices. While that works in the short term, maybe because they feel like they have to follow through, then as soon as you're off plan, as soon as the kids go to college, as soon as the kids have more room, as soon as you're not following the exact meal plan that a coach gave you, people go off and they don't know how to handle a new situation. And so authoritative parenting, same thing like authoritative coaching, doesn't work long term. It actually produces worse habits. And so letting people have the choice, letting them have the flexibility to make choices is going to teach them how to make the best choices later on also.
There are so many like rabbit holes that I feel like I would really like to dive down, but inevitably this thing will turn into like a 5-hour episode. So we're going to avoid that. But it really, like, I am just thoroughly enjoying like listening to y'all's input and the things that are like the thing that seems to be most apparent, right? That if we're like putting together a short little checklist for any parent listening at home to like, all right, what do I need to remember and like try and act upon, is it sounds like being flexible in your expectations and standards of yourself is paramount. Like they're which is like, that is such a cliche and it's such a platitude, but like at the same time, if you think about the weight of those words and what they mean for every aspect of our life, they're incredibly powerful, right? Like that carries over into every aspect of our lives.
For me, I'll say that anytime I'm giving advice to one of my friends, like all my friends are moms now for the most part, and they're feeling bad about how they treated a kid or if they're not doing something perfectly, I said, do you love them? They know you love them? You're doing awesome. Like that is literally the only thing that's really that important. Are you trying your best? Are you loving them with them as much as you can give them at that time? Then you're doing just fine. I think that parents, if they just accept that, and that goes with food, with feeding them, with showing them exercise, like all of those things, as long as you're doing it from a place of love, you're doing better than most parents, or doing just as good as most parents out there.
Yes, and to piggyback on that, I always say, like, if you're worried about being a good parent, you're probably a good parent. Because people that aren't worried about being a good parent probably aren't, right? Because, like, that just kind of carries over. And so I give them, like, that sense of, like, you're doing great. Yeah, like, you're totally doing great. And I think that helps a lot with the mom guilt that we sometimes feel over not making the best decisions all the time.
I love that little like reframe and like ability to like check a member or check yourself with that, because again, like I think that is an intensely relatable experience for every single person, whether you're a parent or not. Like I think we can get so overwhelmed by these expectations of perfection that we have with ourselves that it's like when one small thing goes awry during the day, it's like all this, the natural reaction is, let me beat myself up for this because I'm not perfect. And it's like, well, did anybody expect you to be a robot? Like, are you serious right now? As just kind of a little parting shot, is there anything else at all that, like, some wisdom that you want to drop on a member listening that you feel would be relevant to making sure that they are both the best parents possible, but also the best member possible?
Yeah, so I would say, just because if you ever have a moment where you're feeling mom guilt, again, it's a red flag, and to remind yourself that it's normal. But at the same time, like, make a decision, that mom guilt, because when you make that personal decision for yourself, you're actually able to take the next step instead of crawling back into the hole. Because this is overall, right, what we're trying to do is change our habits. And so when we start changing those habits, it's going to be hard and it's going to feel weird and you're going to have all these emotions come up. But do it despite those emotions. Take the next step, because eventually, like, the mom guilt never goes away, so don't expect it to, right? You're going to want to just take action repeatedly over and over so that you strengthen those muscles in your brain that remind you of why the thing that you're doing is so important to you. And eventually you become so much stronger that you take control over, like, those emotions and that mom guilt feeling. So take the step despite.
I love that.
Yeah.
What about you, Jess?
All right, so I think for me, the parting wisdom I just want to get out there is just to do your best. And I think the best you can do for your kids is to be a really good role model. They're always watching, right? So if they see you eating healthy, they see you prioritizing yourself and exercising. That's a really important thing for them to see. And then to love them, and most importantly, love yourself through all of it. You know, we're all doing our best out here. And so as long as you're doing those things, you're going to be a good role model for them, and that's going to show them the way. I
love that. And seriously, to the both of you, thank you for coming on here. I really do appreciate it. And, like I told you, DeeDee, like I thought this idea was going to be super, super relatable and could potentially touch a whole lot of people who really needed it. So thank you for pushing this forward and for jumping on here. And Jess, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you, Tanner.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, you're welcome.
SUers, I hope you enjoyed it. To every single member that I am coaching that is listening, I hope you recognize that I have learned in this podcast that I am actually your parent. So, so go to bed. Anyways, SUers.
Yeah, kids under 2.
Yeah, unless you have children under 2. But in that case, I'm probably not coaching. So SUers, really, thanks for tuning in. Keep your ears peeled next week. We'll have a new episode for you. Hope you enjoyed it. This was great.
Thanks, Tanner.
Stronger You Radio is a broadcast wellness production powered by StrongerYouFit.com. Content copyright Stronger You. Executive producer Frank Sardella. Thanks for listening to Stronger You Radio. For more information on the podcast, visit StrongerYouPodcast.com.